We still do 7 NUFC Matters shows for free a week. But if you want to support the channel, there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast or video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications option. Hit the thanks button to buy a super sticker. You can do this on the live chat too. You can also join our Patreon page or buy us a coffee at the link in all of our video descriptions below. We are also looking for sponsors. If you want our latest advertising rates and how you can get involved, then email John at nufcmatters1892@gmail.com. Welcome along to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Reid. That is Ask Gibbo. Good evening, John. This is a pre-recorded show. How are you, mate?
I'm good, my friend.
Good to see you, mate. And we're going to start tonight, as I think everybody would expect us to start with you paying tribute to somebody who became a very close friend of yours, and of course to Super Mac, who usually hosts this show with you, John Tudor.
Yeah, wonderful man, wonderful player, dear friend, a deep thinker about the game. He was much more than Tonto to the Lone Ranger in his partnership with Malcolm MacDonald, and Super Mac always paid huge tribute to him. Said he was the most unselfish of teammates he could ever wish for. He didn't just score goals, but he made them for other people, which included Malcolm, of course. And that clip early on you showed of Malcolm's goals, he deftly flicked over the ball to set Supermac up to score. I think it was the Liverpool game. He was a great man. He was bought just before Malcolm was bought, and I had dinner with him in the county hotel the night before he signed for Newcastle United. And he told me with great satisfaction that he'd been offered 85 quid a week plus 25 quid appearance money, plus a bonus on the size of the crowd, and another if Newcastle were in the top 5. And he said with his chest bursting out of his shirt, sometimes I'll be able to earn as much as 200 quid a week. Can you imagine that now for talking to Alexander Isak or Callum Wilson or whoever? He was a lovely man who had the best of his times with Newcastle United. He played 222 games for us, scored 74 goals. His best seasons were 72, 73 when he got 24 goals, 74, 75, 18 goals. And of course, he played in the FA Cup final alongside Supermac in 74 when we didn't have the best of finals, but the build-up was colossal to the finals. We got through every game away from home. Supermac scored in every game away from home. And of course, the famous one at home when we beat Nottingham Forest 4-3, John scored a decisive goal, diving header, typical John Tudor. But of course, the match had to be replayed again, and that never counted in his records. But I had so much time for him. Shortly after the cup final in 74, I took him with me to Germany for the World Cup finals. England hadn't qualified, one of the very few times England weren't in the World Cup finals. So we were based in Frankfurt and we followed Scotland all around Germany. And he was a great companion. And he said he paid special attention to all the world-class strikers to learn something about his game. And that was typical of John. And he was called King for Days. He did a autobiography called King for a Day, and he was exactly that. He had a tough time, Steve, later on. He was 78 when he died. He was in a care home suffering from dementia. And haven't we heard a lot of that recently with Newcastle players? Tommy Cassidy, John McNamee. His wife, Anne, was a great campaigner on behalf of footballers with dementia, the Jeff Astle case. She supported that terrifically. And of course, he was a great header of the ball, John. So that might have come into it. 2014, he'd suffered a heart attack out there. He settled in America at the end of his playing days and he coached young kids out there. It become tough for Anne and tough for John late in his life because, of course, America has no national health service, and financially it become a bit of a burden to him. But he had his family with him when he died, and all my thoughts now go out to Anne and his kids, and I'm just left with warm, warm memories. Look at the smile on that face, and you can't help but light up yourself, can you?
No, lovely tribute, John. We seem to be doing a lot of these lately. Of course, we've lost Alan Shoulder and Gordon Marshall over the last couple of weeks as well. So not been a great time for former Newcastle United legends, and our thoughts, of course, with the family. But lovely tribute. Thanks for that, John. And if you want to read John's tribute, of course, in the Chronicle, for any of those players, get yourself online and check out John's stuff. John always... put some wonderful words together about these ex-players, and that man's no exception. Great as well, John. I've just got to say, well done to the Chronicle for giving the front page spread to John Tudor. It's nothing more than he deserved.
I was thrilled to bits with that. I provided the words. You wonder how it'll be received in the office to give it a double-page spread on sport and a page one lead. And if ever anybody deserves that, John did. And I spoke fleetingly with Malcolm because Anne Tudor asked me if I would inform Malcolm MacDonald, if I would inform Bob Moncur, and if I'd inform the club about John's passing. And I managed to get Malcolm on the phone, and we talked for a short while, and he paid great tribute to the man and was very warm about it. And the club feel exactly the same way. And he's deserved every part of what he's received, because him and Supermac in partnership were quite something. Everybody thinks of Supermac and Hibby, and of course they do. But the twin centre forwards, in days when we had twin centre forwards, Supermac and Tudor was as good as you got at first division level.
Yeah. Okay, let's move back on to football and current day. Let's talk FA Cup first, John. Newcastle United travelled to Birmingham. And if you remember last Thursday, my prediction was Birmingham 2, Newcastle 4. That was my prediction last Thursday. Hey, I wasn't far off, John.
You weren't far off. It was a fabulous match, wasn't it? It was a real old-fashioned cup tie. No VAR. Birmingham donkeys years ago, excuse me, Steve, were nicknamed the Brummie Bashers because of what happened, part of what happened in the 70s when we played them 7 times in one season. 6 times we played them, Steve, in 6 weeks. Of course, bad blood spilled over. There wasn't time to forget about it, was there? And it all started when Tony Ward did Natris with a bad injury down there, and of course ended up here when Jinky went out for retribution, and one of the fastest sendings off ever known, 53 seconds. He just done want in the game up here. We played them in the Texaco Cup, and we played the whole game with 10 men, still won 3-1. Jinky didn't wait for the red card. He just walked the minute the tackle went in, and he was off. And they were not as bad as that, because you can't get away with that these days. But they were physical, as you would expect the League One side to do against the top Premier League side, because it's the only way they're going to have a chance. But I felt they were really physical. They got the help of such a quick start, 1 up in 40 seconds, and then equalised for 2-2 with a worldie. That guy has never struck one like that before, and he'll never strike one like that again. But we got through it and we won it and made it 6 away wins on the trot and got a decent home draw, in my opinion. Brighton at home to follow, Steve. We can't ask for more when you get to the last 16 than getting a home draw. Yes, it's against the Premier League club, and yes, they won up here 1-0 earlier this season, but I still think Newcastle can get through against Brighton.
Couple of standout performances. I mean, Joe Willock, Would you say he was fortunate with his first goal? I mean, the guy must have had Superman's vision to see that, the linesman, but his flag was straight up, John, so he was obviously confident the ball across the line.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm honest, and I don't give a monkeys now because it worked in Newcastle's favour. I just think he saw the goalkeeper in the back of the net and thought he must, if he saved the ball, he's standing in the back of the net, it must have crossed the line. But of course, he had his hands forward and parried it. And I'm certain if there had been goal line technology, they would have said all of the ball was not over the line. And if you remember, when it come back out, Joe skied it so far. Johnny Wilkinson dropped goals for England at rugby never did. It got the ball higher than that. It was quite amazing. But the guy saved it in his net, and that's what's caught the eye of the linesman. But he scored a terrific winner, and I thought brought into the side because we didn't have Joe Linton, etc. I thought he did well. And I was pleased for the boy, and he's give Eddie Howe something to think about for Man City on Saturday when we won't have Joe Linton again. Does he go with Joe Willock? Well, 2 goals scored in his last game. It'll be difficult to drop him.
Certainly will. The missing man was back in action as well, Callum Wilson. And I think, you know what? I mean, I know we went a goal down after like 45, 50 seconds, but before that, like literally 20 seconds before that, Callum Wilson had almost shown Newcastle's intent by barging through the 2 centre halves, putting his body on the line, which we could do without. He's been out for so long. But you know what? He set the precedent, and Callum Wilson and Asula probably stood out quite well up front. Callum Wilson first got a goal, John, and that's his currency as a striker.
And he took it the typical way a striker would love to take it. Alan Shearer would have been filled to bits with a goal like that. It bounced up. Asula, who I thought did terrific, and I'll get on to him in a minute. But I mean, he almost cleared it off their line, didn't he? He tried to flick it in with his left foot, and he flicked it against his right leg, and it bounced back out, and Callum Wilson thankfully put the rebound in. But Asula just about cleared it off the line. A great defensive move. But where Wilson was good, it was coming to him at neck height, and he got his boot up there and above the ball and forced it down so it went over the line. A typical goal poacher's goal. That will have done him the world of good because that's what he does and that's what he lives on. And good for him. And he lasted a reasonable length of time. That was all pluses because we need him around. I thought Asula was terrific, both on the wing and when he went to centre forward in place of Callum, when Callum come off. I thought the kid did well. And I know he scored the worldie earlier in the cup, and I know people say, well, it's against inferior opposition. It was Bromley and it was Birmingham. And yes, it was. We've got to be truthful. But he showed glimpses of what he's got, apart from his blistering pace, which we know is his biggest asset. I thought that was his most promising performance for Newcastle by quite some distance, and gives us a little bit of hope that there's something there. There's a rough diamond there to be polished by Eddie and his coaches. But I thought he did terrific. Pleased that Callum come through. I thought Willock did terrific. All round, it was a good performance against a feisty Birmingham side who are on the up and up because they're winning for fun in their division. But this was a bit different. But it was a rip-roaring cup tie, wasn't it? I mean, it was really blood and thunder and the old-fashioned sort of cup tie. Nice to see Nick Pope come through it. Couple of good saves, reminding us that he's still around, and reminding Martin of the same thing, and reminding Eddie Howe of the same thing. So all in all, a good day at the office.
A very good day at the office, no doubt about it. As you say, a home draw against Brighton won't be easy, but it's a home draw, and you've got to be confident about that. The one tarnishing thing about the match at the weekend was injuries. Obviously, we will find out more when we come to our fixture at the weekend. But Dan Burn going off with a groin injury. Of course, Sven Botman missed out on this game with a little knock to the knee. So we just got to hope that those 2 guys come through, because it would be typical of Newcastle's luck to lose 2 centre halves after selling one in the transfer window.
Yes, it would. That's absolutely our sort of luck, isn't it? I mean, we've already got Joe Linton out. the two centre halves. I mean, Burns having his best season for Newcastle. There's no question about that. And Botman has come back from a very bad injury and has come back looking good. And we desperately need at least one of them to play at Man City on the left side. Yes, we've got Shaw for the right side, but we need one of them. And I'm hopeful if Byrne doesn't make it, and a groin is a difficult thing, and if he doesn't make it, I'm hopeful that Botman with the rest will. So one of the two left-siders will be able to play with Shaw. But yes, it is a worry. And at this stage of the season, that's the way it is. We've already got Joe Linton out. We'd lost Nick Pope for a while, but we've coped with that. Dubrovka's done great, but we don't want our centre halves to be hammered. And we've thought we were overstocked with left-sided centre halves when we had Byrne, Botman, and Kelly. But we've lost one, and the other two could theoretically both be out of Man City. Though, as I say, I'm very hopeful at least one of them will make it.
Yeah, fingers crossed on the injury front. Cup final tickets now. On sale. Is there ever a fair way to do this, John? I mean, the club have released the various things. People will be now waiting for their pots to open. Pot 1, pot 2, and pot 3 should have all had the confirmation emails. Pot 1 went on sale on Wednesday, 12 o'clock. Prices range from 41 to 150. Newcastle's allocation this time around 31,939, which is slightly down on what we got 2 seasons ago. That was 32,761. No reasons being given for the downsizing, incidentally. But those who are in groups 4, 5, and 6 in those kind of pots won't have been contacted yet. The criteria is quite simple. People were going through it with a fine-tooth comb when it came out, but obviously they're rewarding people who've got a season ticket, but also who signed up for the cup scheme and who've been to all 5 games. I think that's a fair way of doing it, certainly for pot 1. What's your feeling? Is there a fair way of doing it?
Well, there never is, in as much as if you're not in the pot, you think it's all unfair, don't you? I mean, there isn't a way that you're going to satisfy everybody, because there's 50,000 Geordies in St James's Park every home game, with about 2,000 allocated to the visitors. Now, all those 50,000 can't go to Wembley, because we haven't got an allocation of 50,000. So there's always people disgruntled. I remember in the old days when we were doing tickets in the 70s for the 74 FA Cup final and the 76 League Cup final, there wasn't this in-depth analysis of how many games you'd attended or whatever. And often there was huge accusation of what we've since called the prawn sandwich brigade, coming out the woodwork for the cup finals and spending a fortune because they want to go to a cup final when they never bother themselves for when we're at home to Coventry City. And of course, the ticket touts, the famous lad in Gates and etc., made a fortune because the players made pennies and give the tickets to the ticket touts, and he sold them at 7 times the face value to other Newcastle fans. So there's never a perfect way of doing it, because when it becomes supply and demand, everybody wants it because it's a cup final. And if there's 50,000 that legitimately go to Newcastle and want tickets, there'll be another 20,000 hangers on that would just want to be there for the occasion. So there's not enough tickets to go around under any circumstances, and Liverpool will take their huge allocation. Of course they will, because they follow in the way we follow. And I know it's not necessarily the greatest cup final for them, because they would hope to win the Premier League. They would hope they could even win the Champions League. But let's remember, we are still in the situation, Steve, where we could actually go to Wembley twice and win twice. In domestic cups this season. Liverpool can't, because Liverpool are obviously out of the FA Cup, and Arsenal can't because they are out of both cups at this stage. So Liverpool and Arsenal can't do the Wembley double. I'm not suggesting we will, but we can. That's
It would be typical of Newcastle to do something like that as well. I mean, I stuck a daft quid, as you know, on the treble. I mean, it was a joke bet, £1 on 500 to 1. But I mean, theoretically, we could still do it. It's unlikely, but yeah, I mean, that's it. It would be typical of Newcastle. The FA Cup path has opened up for us. I mean, I think Newcastle are second favourites behind Manchester City, John. So, there's no surprise.
All the big clubs, the so-called invincibles, are out. I mean, Arsenal is out of the FA Cup. Liverpool is out of the FA Cup. There's us, Man United, Man City, and Aston Villa, and possibly Forest of any stature. But we needn't be scared of any of those.
No.
I mean, Man City aren't the Man City of old. Man U, we've chucked up quite easily, home and away. Forest, we've played twice already this season at Forest, knocked them out the League Cup and won 3-1 in the league. In Aston Villa about on a par with us in their development. So there isn't. I mean, Liverpool are a tougher challenge in the League Cup final, I would suggest, Steve, than any of the sides that left in the FA Cup are. I mean, I'm just sorry that a couple of them aren't playing each other, a couple of these sides, like Man City v Man United or Forest v Villa. That would be nice, but it looks as if they could all get through to the quarterfinals, and then it'll start getting interesting. But there's nobody where you really want to avoid.
You mentioned VAR earlier. I mean, what's your views, John? I've asked a few people on the show over the last couple of days. What's your view about VAR not being in those early rounds, but then coming into the later rounds? So it makes a bit of a farce of the competition, doesn't it?
Well, it is. I mean, how do you have rules for early doors? And I know there's situations where smaller clubs are in, but you have rules for early doors and then not for later on. It's like saying, well, the competition isn't important until we get to within sight of Wembley, then it does become important. It's just silly, but the theory of VAR is tremendous to eliminate horrendous mistakes. But early in its life, it has been an absolute nightmare, hasn't it? And it's the human factor of how it's interpreted that has annoyed a lot of people. And it's the fact that how long do you wait for a goal? Was there much last night or something? Where was it Man City? Where Haaland scored against Real, and it took 4 minutes to decide whether it was onside or not. In the meantime, the players have time to put on their tracksuits to keep warm and do a few exercises, like while they wait to find out if it's a goal or not. It's an absolute nonsense, and that is some of the beauty of the early FA Cup rounds, isn't it? If you score a goal, you get an instant reaction to scoring a goal, and the elation amongst the players and on the terraces. There's no trepidation as it's going to be marked out, and it's back to the old days, which were fun. And there's a lot to be said for that as well.
I mean, on top of that as well, you've also got the change in format because, you mentioned when you were given that wonderful, obituary to John Tudor about that FA Cup clash that we had with Forest, where, we had the infamous pitch invasion and, different replays, and Newcastle had lots of replays in the FA Cup over the years. And that sometimes was the beauty of it. Sometimes it was an absolute nightmare because, you'd sometimes have to play 2, 3 times, maybe even 4 times. But now it's, a game like, I don't know, let's say Newcastle against Brighton. If it was a draw at St James's, then it would be back to Brighton. And, there was a lot to be said about that. It helped raise finance and money for the other clubs. If you were playing like a lower league team, it was great for them. Stevenage, prime example. Newcastle played Stevenage away. Shearer's come back. He manages to grab the goal, takes them to St James's, and Stevenage loved it. They came up here, full house. I think Paul Thompson, a local lad, was playing for Stevenage that day. But we had, that was a great way of raising money. Now it's bang, game. If you haven't got a score, extra time. And if you haven't got extra time, it's penalties. That's it. And I understand why it is, but do you like that, John? Do you think it's better? Do you think it's made it better?
No, I think it reflects the standing of the FA Cup. In the old days, go back as far as when Jackie Milburn played, the FA Cup was the be end and end all of everything. I mean, the cup final was the showpiece game of the season. And what Jackie said to me many, many times, most footballers preferred to win the FA Cup for that wonderful day at Wembley than they did to win the league, because there was more drama to the last day. And I mean, I remember a lot later than that, the FA Cup, the build-up started at 9 o'clock in the morning and went on till about 6 o'clock at night. That's how important the FA Cup was in the FA Cup final. It's become less and less important as time's gone on because of the Champions League and the money surrounding the Premier League, etc., etc. But clubs, okay, I mean, just look at last night or the night before. If we look at the other St James's Park, Exeter battled through against Nottingham Forest. They have a bloke sent off on his debut with about 3 minutes to go. But because there's no replays, they've got to go all the way through the extra time half hour with 10 men against 11 against the top Premier League side, still get the penalties and then get knocked out. And they're deprived of what would have been a huge payday at Nottingham Forest in a replay. And it's taken away some of the, the wonderful moments. Mind you, if we go back far enough, in the 70s, when we played Hereford non-league side up here, we drew up here. I would have settled for extra time and penalties up here instead of going down to Hereford and getting cost and becoming one of the great upsets in the history of the game is Newcastle at Hereford. But no, being serious, it has taken away an awful lot of the glamour, for particularly I feel for small clubs. Exeter had deserved the day out at Nottingham Forest in the sun. They were denied it, and it's happened earlier this season, and it'll continue to happen. But it's all goes under the banner of progress, whether it is or not. But football is money dominated now, Stephen. If the money's in the Champions League and the money's in the Premier League for the clubs through the television money, etc., then the League Cup and the FA Cup get squeezed, 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 and squeezed. Eventually, we'll probably lose the League Cup, and we might, in about 30 or 40 years, lose the FA Cup.
They still, as well, play that Ronnie Radford goal. You were around in those days, John. You remember that. I was just a twinkle in my dad's eye. But, honestly, that goal, I mean, it just constantly, doesn't matter what it is, it just gets wheeled out every year. And there's been some huge, in fact, bigger cup upsets in recent times. You couldn't get any more of an upset than Wimbledon beating Liverpool at Wembley in the cup final. But, yeah, that Radford goal still gets played, John. It must grind on you.
Oh, I mean, I was there at the time, and every time I say it now, I think both Supermac and John Tudor might just get a tackle on him when he breaks off the halfway line. I'm saying, go on, go on. And you know what? They never get there yet. And it's because the pitch was about in a foot of mud, and he lashed it so hard into the back of the net. I mean, Willie McFall didn't catch it when it boomeranged back into play off the back of the net. It was hit so hard. And of course, the other thing is, that's what's remembered. That only brought extra time. The bloke that scored the winning goal, who was a London taxi driver called Ricky George, doesn't get any of the adulation for scoring the winning goal for a non-league side against the first divisional side. It all goes to Radford because his was a belter. I mean, Ricky George drove taxis in London and only went on as a sub. I saw him in the nightclub the night before. At 2 o'clock in the morning, he was in the nightclub because he said, well, I'm only sub tomorrow, and my job's to, when we talked to him, he said, well, I drive a London taxi, man. I'm out having a good time in Hereford, and I won't be needed tomorrow. I'm just a sub. And he went on and scored the winning goal. I mean, incredibly lovely stories, unless you're a Newcastle United fan, of course. But yeah, all those days have mainly gone.
Yeah, they certainly have. Okay, we'll have a quick break with the ads. Back after this.
A big thanks to all our sponsors, Skips and Bins. Say hello to low-cost waste disposal with pay-as-you-go and contract waste management. Find them at their website, skipsandbins.com. Contact them, www.skipsandbins.com/contact. A big thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. You can find them at their website, mrvickies.co.uk, email info@mrvickies.co.uk, or telephone 01768 210 102. A big thanks to our fanzine sponsor, United Group Travel. 2 crew, driver and courier, local family company, 3-star plus quality hotels and no interchanges. All excursions included. Find them at their website, www.unitedgrouptravel.com. Email them at beverly.ugtl@gmail.com. Telephone 01670 632 460 or mobile 0791 666 4174. Just £30 per person deposit. There are no strangers on our tours, just friends you haven't met yet. A big thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the technical side of things. You can find them at their website, media-arts.co.uk. If you want to listen to us as a podcast, you can go to Sports Social Podcast Network. You can also find us on iTunes, Spotify, and your other podcast providers. If you want to help support the channel, hit the thumb up, which is the like button. Click share to share to your other social medias. Click join to join the channel. And click the subscribe button. We've also got links in our description for buy us a coffee and to be a Patreon member. Some events coming up. An afternoon with Sir Les Ferdinand, 6th of April, 12 till 4. Tickets available from ticketmaster.co.uk. No Covers takes place at the Cluny, Lilac Lane, Ryder and the Chris Norris Band. Tickets from theclooney.com or by telephone in 0191 230 4474. An evening with Steve Howie and Steve Watson, hosted by Joe Allen, takes place at the Tyneside Irish Centre on the 27th of June. Tickets for that are from newcastlelegends.com. An evening with Peter Beardsley and Chris Waddle takes place at the Tyne Theatre and Opera House on the 23rd of January 2026. Box office 0844 246 1000 or website tynetheatreandoperahouse.tv. An evening with Bad Manners takes place on Friday the 30th of January 2026 and tickets available from ticketmaster.co.uk. And we have copies of The Entertainers 1992 to 1997, Kevin Keegan's Legacy, available from newcastlelegends.com.
Okay, welcome back to NUFC Matters here on Ask Gibbo. We're slightly shorter show today, and it is a pre-record if you've just tuned in halfway through, so we're not ignoring your questions. We are pre-recording this the day before. John, the next set of fixtures are interesting. We'll look at Man City in a bit more depth in the moment, but Man City away, followed by Nottingham Forest at home. Then we've got Liverpool away on the Wednesday night. Now we've got the FA Cup home tie sandwiched in the middle of that. And then we've got West Ham away, and then we've got the Cup final. But just focusing on those next three games, Man City away, Nottingham Forest at home, Liverpool away. I mean, those three fixtures literally could cement our place in that top four, John.
Oh, I mean, it's massive. It is absolutely massive. Because on paper, the three formidable hurdles. The Man City, the habitual Premier League winners, Nottingham Forest, the surprise package of the season. 2 years ago, it was us getting into Champions League. Last season, it was Aston Villa. This is even more amazing if Nottingham Forest make it, because they've been fighting relegation big time. And then Liverpool, runaway leaders of the Premier League, decide we're going to play in the cup final. Excuse me. Three massive, massive games. And we cannot afford to drop 9 points. But if we get 7 out of those, 7 points, wouldn't we be flying? Because not only would it cement us at the top, but it would knock back all three clubs who are all rivals for Champions League. I think Liverpool are certainly going to get the Champions League. Arsenal will probably get the Champions League, although we've beaten them 3 times this season. And then it's up for fighting for us all after that. But, once upon a time it would have been terrifying. But I don't consider Man City terrifying, because we'll be talking about them in a moment. But they're not the team they were. They're not the team that were virtually invincible over the last 4 or 5 seasons. Nottingham Forest are unbelievable, but we've beaten them twice already this season, and both away from home. And Liverpool are a different class, and they are our jinx club. They always get a result against us, always get a result, and they look as if they're strolling to the title that originally was held by Manchester City. They will be tough, but we're not patsies anymore. We needn't be scared. We are better than we have been. We're better, certainly, than the team that played in the League Cup final 2 years ago. And I go to Man City with no trepidation. I play Forest up here with no trepidation. And I realise what Liverpool away is and how tough it is. But hey, let's go and see what happens.
Yeah, it's an exciting time to be a Newcastle United fan, fighting on three different fronts, and it is very positive. So yeah, after our exploit in the Cup, Newcastle do return to Premier League action on Saturday when they visit the Etihad Stadium. Kick-off is an old-fashioned 3:00 kick-off. We had 3,000 tickets, and as you know, we've sold them all. We are going in search of a club record equaling fifth successive Premier League win away from home, but we will need to win for the first time at this ground in that competition in order to achieve it. Fascinating stats on this game at their stadium, especially when you hear John say that we shouldn't fear this, we don't fear it. This will be Newcastle's 20th attempt at trying to get a win down there. We've only taken 2 points from a possible 57 points at their ground. But tell you how bad it's been. The last player to score a Premier League goal at the Etihad was DeAndre Yedlin back in September 2018. So we haven't scored a goal there for 8.5 hours. In all competitions, Newcastle have won 6 successive matches away from St James's Park going into this game. That's their best run of form since managing 7 in a row on the road back in 1994. It's a little bit early for team news, of course, but we do know that Jamal Lascelles will remain out. There will be news of a sort at the press conference on Friday on Harvey Barnes, who wasn't far off a return. Joe Linton, who wasn't expected to be out too long. Sven Botman, who you got the impression it was more of a precaution rather than anything serious. So we should get some news on him. Dan Burn and Anthony Gordon, you're looking at question marks over them. Dan definitely seemed to have some problem with his groin. Anthony Gordon's the one that's really just doing the rounds over the last 48 hours. People saying that he might not be fit to start at the weekend. But we wait and see. As for Man City, they've flopped a lot this season. Obviously, they've just lost to Real Madrid as well in the Champions League by 3-2. Rodri is out for the season. They've got doubts at the moment over Nathan Ake, Jeremy Doku and Edison. But at the time of recording the show, we don't know whether they've picked up any injuries at the Bernabeu. At Man City, against Real Madrid. Jack Grealish and Manuel Akanji did pick up knocks and they were forced off. Substitutes were made, but we will wait and see on news on that. The referee for this particular fixture is Andy Madley. It's his third Premier League game involving Newcastle so far this season. He was in charge of the 3-3 home draw with Liverpool when we should have played an extra 10 seconds and got the winner, and the 2-1 win at Spurs. VAR, it's John Brooks. It's his second VAR shift this month for a game featuring Newcastle. He was involved in the Carabao Cup home win over Arsenal when Alexander Isak's opener, of course, was ruled out due to a marginal offside call. Don't forget as well, the food bank will be outside the ground in their usual place before the match at all home games. But for this one, you can donate online, with this one being an away fixture. So get yourself on to the food bank's website and drop in a virtual donation today. John, Man City, big game because it's our next one. What's your feelings about this game, mate?
Yeah, huge game. I'll say it again, they don't terrify teams anymore like they used to. I think they've had so much success, and it's so easy when you have success to think, well, it's going to roll on. They took the eye off the ball a little bit, and some of their real blue chip players have got old together. De Bruyne, Bernardo Silva, Gundogan, Kyle Walker, who's gone out into Italy on retirement, and they haven't had the replacements in. They've started doing that now. They've suddenly realised the problem. They've spent 200 million in the January transfer window to try to put it right. And they're still dangerous, don't get me wrong. On his day, De Bruyne can be magnificent. They've still got Haaland, they've still got Phil Foden, they've got the new players. But, you know, if you look at the current situation on the stats, Steve, we go into this game, we've got 12 wins out of our last 14 games in all competitions. Manchester City have lost 12 of their last 24 games in all competitions as a consequence of losing to Real Madrid last night. Their confidence must be on the floor. I mean, they were 2-1 up with 5 minutes to go against Real Madrid with the second leg next week. And they didn't just let an equaliser in, but they let a winner in. And now they've got to go to Bernabeu a few days after playing us, and they're 3-2 down. Hopefully their confidence is shattered and they've got an eye on the second leg when they play us. But they've taken a dip and we've had a rise, as I've mentioned. The consequence is we go into this game, we both have identical records in the Premier League. We've both won 12, drawn 5 and lost 7. We've even got the same goal difference, 13. The figures for City and us are absolutely identical in February. Who would have said that in recent seasons gone by? That we would be on the same figures as Man City and capable of going above them. I'm not underestimating them. They've got great players who, if they turn it on in the day, will give us problems. But there's no need to be terrified anymore. We can go down there and take advantage of their fragility. If they lost 12 of the last 24, that's unheard of with Pep, isn't it? So we can go down there and give them a game. They have good players like Haaland, like Foden, like De Bruyne if they get it right. But from their point of view, we've got good players like Isaac and like Gordon and like Bruno and like Tonali. We've got players to worry them. And we've got to go down on the front foot with a positivity and a way of saying this could be our turn. You give the record of us, which is horrendous down there, but records like that are meant to be broken, Steve. So let's go and break it.
Okay, John, very confident. I'm going to go for a 2-1 win to Newcastle. I do think we'll win down there. I think it'll be a great game. A lot depends, of course, on the team that Newcastle can put out. But even if we are struggling for a centre-half or two, I think Emil Kraft can come in and probably do a job for us. But I'm confident, John. I'm going to go for a 2-1 win.
I would do exactly the same. What we've got to do is not lose. At the very least, we've got to draw. I know it's asking so much to say, well, that will be 7 successive away victories, when we used to be terrified and get a nosebleed if we went over the Tyne Bridge. Now we win every time we go over the Tyne Bridge. Can we make it 7? Yes, let's have a go for it, because the next away game, Liverpool, is the ultimate Beecher's Brook for us in the whole season of away games. I think, like you, we can win 2-1. I wouldn't be upset too much with a draw, but I would rather win 2-1 at City and take what draw for Anfield.
Slightly shorter show. It's a pre-record and I'm off to buy me cup final ticket, John. So I will see you next week. Take care, mate.
All the best, lads. Take care, fella.